handle the truth.
Can't handle the truth.
What is going on, everybody? Welcome back. Welcome back. Another great episode of Thursday Night Get Right. Demetris and Thomas Freemy. We are back on the stage again to bring another great episode, another great discussion to the American people and the people worldwide. But before we get into the discussion, let me say my to-dos. First and foremost, please visit www.cominghomecoalition.com. Make sure you check out Project Start Fresh. You can lend a hand in supporting Mr. Eddie back into self-sufficiency. I mean, he's pretty much there. We've gotten him back into work, but we still just need that little extra boost, and you can do that by entering the raffle that we have online to win Tampa Bay tickets. We're thinking about maybe boosting that up a little bit, throwing maybe some food prizes in there as well. Many prayers out to Turkey, man, and the devastating earthquake that they had out there and what's going on over there. Many blessings and prayers to the people over there. A lot of things going on. We got this big crack over in Africa now. You seen that too,
Yeah, boy.
A lot of stuff going on, man. And this is why I say to the people, the age of Aquarius. If you have not heard about this, research the age of Aquarius, the time of enlightenment. And this is a time to really just get right with yourself, man, and just recognize that there's bigger things going on than just your little necessities. So with that, I pass it over to my awesome co-host, Mr. Demetrius Knucklezeel.
What up, what up, what up, what up? What up, doe, to those in Detroit, those around Detroit who know Detroit. Our language is what up, doe. And as he just says, as the brother just said, we sending out special prayers to all of those people who's going through some stuff, especially those in Turkey. They've had thousands and thousands of people die in that earthquake. And just pulled a little girl from the rubble, I think early today or last night. And I was watching that. That was a tearjerker because it kind of took me back to 9/11 when they were still pulling people out, a month later. But so we sending out special prayers to everybody, recovery efforts and everybody there, all the families and the victims' families. And I want to give a special shout out right now. To everybody who's standing up against corruption. Everybody who's standing up against corruption in government, that's including law enforcement and criminal justice departments. I want to give a special shout out to them, especially Michigan Liberation, the Great Minds Project 5.0, Thomas Freemy Show, Coming Home Coalition, Nation Outside, and so many others in Michigan that I know, and so many others across the United States that I know. We want to give a special shout out to them. And we're about to delve into a topic that's hot on the press right now, but we want to talk about it from our angle and stop allowing the worldwide news media to dictate the conversation and cover up certain facts. We want to tell you the whole truth and nothing but the truth, so help us God.
Amen. And that's coming from two individuals with experience, lifelong experience in this. This isn't just people who are just sitting around, jibber jabbing about what they feel or their opinion. This is experience, and this is experience coming from the other side, not experience as far as school of knowledge, school of education, certificates, but the hard knocks, school of hard knocks. So this past week, I got some advice, man. I reached out because I'm really trying to get this podcast to grow. And everybody that I reach out to talks about how great of a program I have. And they can't figure out why it hasn't grown the way it has until, of course, we sit down with it. But he had told me one of my biggest issues is, one, the titles. He said, your titles suck. You have to go back in, retitle all your episodes, and make sure that you're using words that hit key phrases within the system. Like how to is a big search that people go in and look for, how to do this, how to do that. So put a lot of how-tos in your and you know, throughout your titles and whatnot. But more specifically, I'm definitely guilty of this, is, you know, when we have our discussions, we have our discussions as if everybody is watching our show, and not everybody is. We have a
Right.
lot of audio listeners, and I think we've been leaving them out because we just haven't really been too descriptive for the audio listeners as well, who aren't watching the video. So I'm gonna be a little more mindful of them as well, that not everybody has the fortune to see us, but has the fortune to hear us. And I want to be descriptive to them as well.
Hey man, look, it's funny you said that because I was just looking over how many views you get, and just so the viewers will know, we on topic, but we're talking about building this brand, and a part of building this brand is talking about the brand amongst the people, so the people can give us some advice, suggestions, etc. So I was just looking at your views. I was going over all the Thomas Free Me podcast shows, from the Saturday night shows, the Thursday night, and I was looking at how many views, and I was like, man, we got some good topics going on, but we ain't getting the views that other people get. And I started looking at my podcast, and I'm like, man, I only got 7 views here and 14 over there. But when I put something, when I did hashtags,
Mhm.
and somebody told me use certain hashtags, I got 135 views on one of my shorts on YouTube. So I was looking, and I was gonna mention that to you, but you already brought it up because I said I have to rebrand my titles,
Mhm.
because if you don't have the certain phrases, or what they call in the hashtag phrases that
Mhm.
people end up going to, hashtag what you just said about when you was talking about hashtag how to,
Mhm.
because hashtag how to gonna bring you a whole list of stuff, and the people can search topics through how to.
Mhm.
Or I start putting hashtag defund the police.
Right.
So now they know how to go there. And then we could talk about it, debate, whatever we want. But yeah, you have to rebrand those titles, man. I just learned this just over the last few days myself, rebranding titles to grab the attention, because our titles, our topics, our discussions are too beautiful, too captivating, and too hot of a topic not to get the attention that they deserve, and not to get the discussion amongst the people that they deserve.
Absolutely. No question about it. So moving into and continuing our discussion, and like you brought up in the intro, you know, this police culture, and specifically tonight more about the immunity, you know, the immunity within this police culture, and how that uniform presents that immunity to the public.
Mm, mm, mm,
You know, how when we see this uniform in the public, how that affects us as a human being.
mm.
You know, like I touched on last week, some of the discussion about Tyree and me on TikTok, and a lot of the questions from people are, well, why was he resisting? Why was he resisting? And it's like I'm telling the people, you only think he was resisting because you heard that cop telling him to stop resisting. So your mind is telling you that he's resisting because a cop says it, not
Right.
that he was. Because if you go back and you watch that video, that was the beauty. Man, that was I'll tell you, man, and people that think that life is not divine, that was the beauty of that one security camera with no sound. You had no sound of the officers ordering him. You just got to sit there and watch a human being being beat to death. You know what I mean? And the callousness of it, the calmness of the officers, that's what gets me too. You know,
Right.
this we're always talking about the calmness of the criminal. Just look how calm he was through the trial. You know he's killed people before. You know what I mean? Just look how calm he was.
Ain't that something? Ain't that something? And 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 that's what we say. Look how calm they was.
Hmm.
It's like it's just like, I remember when I was in prison and we used to crack jokes. We used to say, man, I whoop on you on the way to the real fight. And that's what they was doing because they just whooped on somebody a few days earlier. They whooped on the other person on the way to the real fight. But it wasn't no fight, it was a murder. And they did this knowing full well that this is the history that they and the legacy and the reputation that they are garnering. But they knew that that reputation was always covered up because it's always the same ones. That's they clique, that's they group, that's they gang. Furthermore, the one guy, Tadarius, was also the president of a scandal-ridden what is not fraternity.
Fraternity.
Yeah, he was the president of a scandal-ridden fraternity.
Fraternity.
So he already have if they had done any history on this guy before hiring him, they would have knew that this man already has this history. If they would have done any history, any real investigation on their names involved in police complaints, they would have discovered that their names came up in a beating just 3 days earlier. And that was just one incident.
Mm.
So they do this stuff with the idea that they are immune, they are above the law, and ain't nobody gonna do nothing. The prosecutor's gonna automatically side with them, and they are always gonna be innocent until there's a mountain of evidence to prove them guilty, which the prosecutor never present that mountain of evidence against a law enforcement officer, especially when it's a culture, because that would bring down a whole department. But yet, here go five guys. Here go five guys who challenges the prosecutor right now. This is five guys. My fault. This is seven guys. Five guys participated in the murder. The other two sat aside and watched the murder happen. Here's seven people who's challenging law enforcement across the United States, prosecutors across the United States saying that this is what we do. It's either you're going to support us or you ain't. Now what? The ball is in your court.
I was on mute. So what it is, when I switch over to look things up online, I get muted.
Okay.
I have to fix that some kind of way. But what I was saying is, remember what I was saying last week about the qualified our Tyree in a parallel universe, right? And
Right.
and that Tyree survived that beating. And now he's sitting in the county jail looking at these 15 charges. And more importantly, the most important thing about that is that you have this kid. This is what's going on all over America. You had this kid, Tyree Nichols, sitting in this jail, having to decide on whether to take it to trial because he knows that he did not do what he is charged with. But what does that trial look like? I'm going to have 5 officers in this courtroom testifying against me. 5 officers, decorated officers, right? I'm a 29-year-old skateboarder kid. This courtroom's going to be filled with cops. It's going to be filled with cops. I don't stand a chance at trial. No way in hell. I've went to trial my whole life, and I would have to think about that one. Because at the end of the day, it's about trying to get as little time as you can. You have to weigh your options. And sometimes you just have to know when to take a beating. You know what I mean? Sometimes you just have to know when to take a beating. Because if you take it to trial and you lose, I promise you, that prosecutor, and this would be a public case like that, man, that prosecutor is going to throw the book at you.
You ain't lying.
And this is what's going on all over America, D.
And And the amazing thing about it is that these officers, it's kind of like it's kind of like how they used to say the criminal always return to the crime scene. And I used to really just be like, that's some stupid stuff until I start returning to the crime scene, right? So now the criminal always returned to the crime scene. Do y'all think this the first time that they did something like this? Because the criminal always returned to the crime scene, whether he come as a spectator or whether he come to commit more crime or to review his handiwork. He always returned to the crime scene. So this is nothing new to them. Let's go back to Darius, who was the president of a scandal-ridden fraternity. A scandal-ridden fraternity.
Sounds like a CCE to me.
Wow. He returned right back to what he know. That group, that bulliness, that type of stuff that dehumanized people, that's what he returned to. Because the criminal always returns to the crime scene. So now, I remember you brought up this a few weeks ago. I'm trying to share this out to my other pages and stuff. I remember you brought this up a few weeks ago. You said about all the about you just brought it up again about the Tyree Nichols, who's all in the county jail with all these trumped up charges, those who are in prison with all these trumped up charges. It's time that they look at these officers' jackets and see how many cases they've been on and see how many men and women have claimed their innocence and have made allegations out or possibly even took a plea because the prosecutor wasn't going to look off into the officers' jackets. But now it's time to look off into those officers' jackets and see what type of cases they've been on over the last few years and bring those cases back if anyone ever claimed that money was stolen from them, they was beaten by these officers, charges were trumped up by these officers. We have to review these cases because they think they just gonna keep getting away because the prosecutors are not doing anything about it.
Well, that's absolutely correct. And you know, on the flip side of that, the sad thing about that is, and I pray, you know, that this gets out to the men and women on the inside, is that people remain honest within this situation because, right, we're trying to fight something, and we don't need a bunch of people looking for a reason to get out of jail and using this to get in the way, muddying down the waters from other individuals who were truly affected by these officers.
Yes.
You know what I mean? So it's just those that have truly been affected by these officers coming forward and speaking out. Like, I can be easily reached. Demetrius can be easily reached. We're on social media 24/7. Trust me, we're getting contacted all day, every day by people. You can reach us and say, listen, man, I was involved with this here. And we'll get that to the proper channels because I'm absolutely for that. I'm absolutely for any time that an official that has their their hands in incarcerating an individual comes out that they're corrupt in some kind of way, right? Their corruption is involved with their workforce in some kind of way. Their whole career has to be audited.
Absolutely. I mean, I'm gonna tell you of a case of where the officers just thought that they was just above the law, and we're not talking about the above the law officers in Malice Green or Rodney King or George Zimmerman and Mike Brown and or the officers in Freddie Gray. We're not talking about those right now. I'm gonna tell you of another incident where the person lived. It was a guy named Dwight Love in Michigan. I knew this guy personally. He went down for a murder that he said he never committed. He said, man, I didn't do it. And he maintained his innocence. And so late 1990, like 1990s, like 98, this attorney got on his case, and I'm not gonna mention her name, but I think I still have her affidavit. Uh she investigated this case. She received information from a former Detroit police officer and a former federal agent. She was going to trial because to take the guy back to court to see if he could prove his innocence. So she went to question these two officers, former Detroit police homicide officer and former federal agent. Now, the federal agent, he told her, got into the back seat of the car, and he looked real scared, according to her, and said, "Don't tell nobody that I told you this." She said, "Okay, I got the chief of the police taking a stand tomorrow. What questions should I ask him to let him know that I got the inside scoop?" This federal officer, former federal officer, said, "Ask him about the miscellaneous files."
Mm.
Now, let me tell you about the miscellaneous files first. They don't talk about it in Michigan no more. But as I tell you the rest of the story real briefly, you will know what I'm talking about. So she got the police, the chief of police on the stand the next day, and she said, "Is there a miscellaneous file involving Dwight Love's case?" He said, "Yes." She asked the court to order the prosecutor's office to turn over the miscellaneous file. This is what the miscellaneous file. The miscellaneous file is the file that contains all evidence that exculpates the or frees the defendant, clears the defendant of all charges. They have a certain file that they put all evidence in your favor in a file, and they hide that file. And then they give the rest of the file that makes it look like you to the prosecutor. So now the prosecutor, we know the prosecutor playing like they don't know, but the prosecutor don't get that file of evidence that clears you. They only get the evidence that makes it look like it's you. So, make a long story short, they turned over the miscellaneous file in the White Love case, and he was cleared, found not guilty of all charges. Now, that ain't the catch. So he get out. He filed a lawsuit for 125, 130 million, something like that. The White Love ended up dying. Guess what? The officer, the former police officer, he ended up dying of natural causes, right? And the other one ended up killing himself because he had cancer. Ain't that something? The three people involved in this case, all of them dead. And the attorney in her affidavit said that every time she come out of her house, the police is sitting at the end of her block, and they'll just ride past and wink their eyes, shake their head. So she moved out of Michigan. That's the system that we dealing with. Sounds unbelievable.
Well, I mean that's similar to the case down here that I'm working on with John Merritt.
Oh
You
yeah,
know,
yeah, yeah.
and now it's I have to prove that this prosecutor, which the prosecutor in his case was Deckel, prosecutor Deckel. I have to prove that he had knowledge that this individual he brought in front of the grand jury was incompetent.
Right.
And it's how do I prove that? Where do I prove that at? Because with this case here, this was a 1985 murder of a man, Daryl Davis, in 5 Points, North Florida. And there was two assailants. There was three assailants. It was a burglary where they broke into a house. Daryl Davis was an EMT worker, and he came home, found them in the home, and this person was tied up, hands behind his back, execution style, to the back of the head with a .25 caliber.
Mm.
Now that's not your average killing, right?
Right.
Execution style and tying somebody up is not your average, oh my God, the owner's home killing. You know what I mean? So the individual who, in my opinion, was the shooter, later ended up getting involved in another shooting in another county, the very next county over, same district, very next county over, Suwannee County, with a man by the name of Frank. He shot into the car with a shotgun. Now, this man lived, and he had charges against him, this guy, Gerald Skinner. So somewhere in there, this prosecutor Deckel and Skinner connected.
Wow.
And Skinner told him about a murder in his county, Columbia County, and he knew who was the murderer, which of course was his unbeknownst friend, Mr. John Merritt. John Merritt didn't know that he was getting ready to do a hell of a deed for his friend.
Right.
So, in that process, Gerald Skinner now gets found incompetent at his own trial, sentenced to a Florida hospital out here, mental hospital, Chattahoochee,
Hmm.
and he is there for 6 months and released in the same condition that he was um, brought in as, which was schizophrenic, completely
Right.
incompetent, like schizophrenic off to the scale. His, I think it was like 292 point something else on the scale.
Wow.
So this guy was a fruitcake, man, and completely bugged out. Thought the whole world was against him. Trusted nobody, and was just living under his own gladiator type world. Back in the mid '80s in this country town, this redneck. You're talking. You ever seen that movie Rosewood?
Absolutely. Down in Florida where people killed up the whole town.
This is where this is at.
Okay.
This is right in those neck of the woods, right
Oh,
there.
1926.
Right in those neck of the woods, right there. All in the same place, same, and it hasn't changed much since then.
Okay.
So it's now when this man is released in November of 1985, he is then in front of a grand jury 4 months later testifying on a murder one against John Merritt to the
Wow.
grand jury to get him indicted. And then 3 months after that, how long did it take for you to get indicted on your murder charge to go to trial?
Shoot. It was like 7 months.
It took them 3 months on this case. By the time he got his discovery, he was in trial 3 months later
Ain't that something? Hmm.
with Gerald Skinner as the star witness. No evidence against. There's nothing to put this man at the crime scene.
Nobody but the person that they said was incompetent.
Nobody but the schizophrenic, incompetent man.
Ain't that something?
And this man has been in prison for 40 years over this. The Innocence Project of Florida, this family has dropped exponential amount of money with them. They dropped him. Everybody has dropped him, and this issue was never raised, has never been raised to the appellate court.
Ain't that something, man? It hurt because I was just reading this guy. I'm sure you know about the guy that they put to death in, where was that? Where they say his last words were strange. They killed him in I think Pennsylvania somewhere. I'm trying to pull him
Just
up.
recently,
Yeah, just the other day. This week. And oh, I know where it's at. But they said he was locked up for killing his ex, well, killing his wife and her children. I think the children was his too. Uh, execution. And he always said that he didn't do it, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And so he said he was in a whole different state. He was in a whole different state. Where it happened at? That's what I'm talking about. That's what I'm talking about. Hold on, John Ballantyne. And I just had him up on my computer, but here he is, right? I just had him. Leonard. His name Leonard? I think his name Leonard. I just had him right here on my screen. But he was uh he was executed for the murders of his wife, and I think it's their children, or at least her children, whichever one it was. And he had claimed his innocence the whole time, right? But he kept telling them that he was in a whole different state when it happened. There were some people from Michigan, Marvin Cotton Jr. and them. I think they went to I think it happened in Pennsylvania. They went to Pennsylvania to try to get the governor to stop the execution of the guy. It didn't work, you know. And so he was executed. But yet they still haven't looked into his claim that he was in a different state. And I'm not saying he was or wasn't. I'm just saying if a person can say something so bold that they were in a different state, not I was around the corner, because to be around the corner don't take away from the possibility. But when you say you was in a different state at 9 a.m. on January 1st, 1999, you was in a whole different state. I was in Texas. That murder happened in Florida. That bears some need for investigation. And so people tried to, oh yeah, that's him, Leonard Taylor. And people tried to get the governor to stop that execution. And the point that I'm making in the realm of our conversation is that you bring up this case. Here's a guy on one hand, and two, the prosecutor's knowledge, full knowledge, this man is incompetent. He's incompetent, and we know that the prosecutor will call us all type of lies, corrupt, unbelievable, uh, despicable, and every other bad word they could call us if we're testifying on behalf of someone to clear them of the charges. But if we're testifying to help the prosecutor convict someone, they will give us every proper title that they could think of. He has no reason to lie. I understand that he was in the mental ward, but he was conscious enough to know who he seen on the night in question, and he identified the person that he seen in the courtroom, and he had no problem doing it. Uh,
You know what
he
I need to
didn't.
do? You know what I need to do, man? I got, because sitting right there, I'm looking at them right now, is my federal transcripts. And I need to pull them out and go to exactly what you're talking about. Because all of that is said. All of that is said. All of that is said.
See,
I need to go in there and pull these transcripts out to that point to where she's instructing the jury on exactly what you're talking about, because she's defining what the plea bargain is. And what this definition of what a plea bargain is, when they're defining this to the jury, because all of this is trying to get the jury to understand why they should believe these witnesses over anything else.
yes,
This is what this whole thing is about. So she's elaborating in detail the structure of the plea, why these defendants plea, the repercussions, the consequences if they don't follow this plea, right? And even though just it's almost like our politics, it's almost like the structure of this culture that we're talking about. Even though we know behind closed doors all of these things exist, but this is out here for you to know that if you do anything in public that we can't cover that goes against this, then you will be out of this program, this snitch program that we got. And you
wow,
don't want to be off that boat. This is what these people told me when I went down to Tampa. They had a federal office, right? When I went down there to find out what evidence these people had against me, and my public defender said, man, I got a good friend inside of the agency. You know, we need to go talk to him and see what they got. Man, they took me inside of a sports authority and walked me all the way to the back and went through this door, and it just opened up into a big federal office.
ain't that something?
Yeah. So
And
I'm sitting in there, man. I'm sitting there with U.S. Customs. I'm sitting there with the lead DEA agent, the prosecutor, my attorney, and I think a transcriber, right?
now, now watch this here. Now, for our listeners, how does that tie into the topic of how officers are doing their acts of corruption? They're being deemed immune, because just think about what Thomas just said. Here it is. They brought him in a room full of powerful people,
Hmm.
powerful people, because those powerful people got your life in their hand, in their hands. For example, you could have killed 100 people, literally, and I mean that literally, because there's cases in Michigan where some guys they say they're responsible for hundreds of murders, but because they was willing to snitch on someone, those powerful people in that room said, we're not going to charge or investigate you for those murders that your name came up in because we need your testimony to convict so and so. Now, that's why the officers get to do what they want to do because the prosecutors play this power to the T. So the prosecutors give officers the power to do what they want to do because as long as those officers are willing to point out and arrest real criminals, as long as they could do that and a record shows that they're making some proper arrests, they're writing the tickets, prosecutors don't care what they do. They don't care what they do. As it don't matter if it's a murder. If their name come, I have watched this with my own eyes
Hmm.
to where a prosecutor they hang out with the officers and they say, don't even worry about that. I, I'll take a look. I'll take care of that for you. This is how they talk to one another. This is how this is how they scratch one another's back. So when they take you in a room like that, imagine the room that they took all of these other officers that killed people, the room that they took them in. We see it on TV because art imitate life. Those movie writers and screenwriters and TV show writers, they didn't just make this up out of their mind. They getting these ideas from real incidents. The officers killed so and so. So the I forgot the person who arrives at the scene to take the gun from the officer and all of this stuff. And then you go in there, you talk to him, and he say, look, as long as you don't got nothing on your record, or if you do got something on your record, if it's not obvious, I never seen it. But you need to keep your nose clean so I can clean this up for you. This is don't talk to nobody. This is all I need you to say. If anybody say anything, this is all you say. And say that you can't speak any further into it. Leave it right there and I'll take care of the rest. Now, what is that really saying? That's gaslighting the officers to give the officers the abuse of authority to further abuse their authority and further abuse the rights of the citizen. And this is why people like Tyree Nichols, Mike Brown, Freddie Gray, Eric Garner, Tamir Rice, Ayanna Jones, Sandra Bland, and so many others get murdered, get killed, and all of the others that have been just charged and made it away with their life, but they ended up in jail still, charged with crimes that they still today say they never committed. But the prosecutors refuse to look off into it. This is why mass incarceration is the way it is and one of the hottest topics right now in politics. Mass incarceration. Because we allow these officers to be immune. Listen, if I shot someone on the street right now, it could be 10 people that will say I defended myself when I shot them, but they still coming to arrest me. But if the police shot someone and it's 10 video cameras showing that that man was running away when he shot him, the police is not even being arrested. If they would hold these police responsible and arrest them the way that because first of all, we're giving big ups to real police. I give big ups to real police who do their job. We're gonna first say that. Now, with that being said, that we honor and respect real police who respect the badge and respect the people, represent and serve and protect the people. We honor them, but we're not talking about them right now. We talking about the people who steps outside of the uniform and now becomes a citizen and kills another citizen. They need to be immediately arrested, booked, thrown in the cell next to people like us that they themselves threw in cells, and they need to deal with it. Sit in there, get that high bond like they do the rest of the people, because they took off their badge. Literally, figuratively, they took off their badge, they took off their uniform and became a citizen in that moment to violate the rights of another citizen when they took his life, when they covered up for the crimes that was committed against them, or when they falsified crime charges against a citizen. Because officers don't do that. Officers don't do that. Real officers don't concoct charges. Real
Mm.
officers don't murder citizens. Real officers don't send people to prison for crimes they didn't do. Real officers don't do that. So we give special honors to real officers, but we condemn those corrupt officers, and they need to be jailed. Period.
Yeah, no question. And if you haven't caught, for the listener, if you haven't caught the episode that I put out, which I'm going to be putting the full interview out here in the next day or so with Temujin greatly
Oh yeah.
articulately details what happens to police when they get inside. And he wasn't joking when he said that. It wasn't scare tactics. This is real life stuff. But so when it comes to what, let me ask this question: why are officers, because okay, so you have these prosecutors that are telling the officers just arrest people at all costs and let us do our job and figure out if there's charges there or not. So you have these officers that are going out in this mindset of just arresting people. This is why when you call 911 now, right, police are showing up with the intention of arresting somebody. They're just coming to look for a crime. Who did what? What they do? Write a statement. Put it down. Okay, cuff them. You're going to jail. This is how police handle situations now. First and foremost, on the tax side of it, because it costs money. When you dial 911, it costs money to send these $1 million troops out there. These are $1 million troops coming out there now. Yeah. So they have to justify that expenditure. How do they do that? They arrest somebody, right? That'll generate funds. So they're coming to arrest somebody, not de-escalate a situation and calm things down. These people are not coming and getting your cat out of the tree anymore.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Right. They'll shoot the cat out of the tree.
They'll shoot it, tase it, they'll do whatever, cut the tree down and let the tree fall. This is what they do. And in all seriousness, that is exactly what they would do. You call the police about a cat up in a tree, they're going to come cut the tree down, and you won't have to call the police about that cat in that tree no more.
And guess what? What you just said is synonymous with what they do with human beings.
Everything. Their whole scheme.
A mother calls the police about her son who's having a mental breakdown. Rather than come deal with the person who's having the mental breakdown, they shoot him down. Like they cut the tree down just to get the cat out the tree. They shoot him down. Now they say, Mom, you don't have that problem anymore. Literally. That's basically what they're saying. I'm saying it in a humorous way, but is that not how many incidents have happened in the last 5 years of a mental case where a person was having a mental breakdown? The police was called by the family who obviously, if they called the police, they thought the police was going to come serve and protect them, come help get their loved one to a hospital. But instead of getting them to the hospital, the police got them to the morgue. How many cases is in the history books over the last 5 years like that?
So let me share this with you, right, D? My daughter, a year ago, Christmas time, right? She's getting ready to graduate high school. She got the pressures of college, everything that my daughter has been through in her life, me being incarcerated, all of this woo-to-woo, right? My daughter does not drink. She's never done drugs. You know what I mean? She's a very good girl. She's strong-headed. She's trying to pave her own way, which I greatly support her in that. But she's a good girl, right? And my daughter's mixed, bless you. My daughter's mixed now. And she stays with her mom, or at the time she stayed with her mom, down in the poor communities of South Florida. Okay, now my parents are up here in the Tampa area. So one night her mom decides to go out for dinner or whatever, and my daughter decided to get into her liquor. And my daughter's completely ignorant of liquor, so she didn't want to get in trouble for drinking all of one bottle. So she drank up half of one bottle and got into another bottle and drank half of that. Well, one bottle was white liquor, the other was dark liquor.
Gotcha.
So my daughter completely flipped the hell out, right? Because she don't know these things. You don't mix white and black liquor, dark liquor.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? Whatever liquor you start with is what you stick with. So she completely wigged out. And she was talking about killing herself. She would just talk, she was just talking about all of the pressures of life that she had as a 18-year-old girl getting ready to graduate school. You know what I mean? So my parents, of course, in their elder years, and they're being up here, can't get to her to assess the situation. They're on FaceTime with her. My daughter's drunk out of her mind, pulling her hair out, the whole degree. My parents are scared to death. They don't know what to do. You know what I mean? So I finally get on the phone with them. All hysteria is going loose. And in that process, they call the police down in South Florida to go do a welfare check. Please go do a welfare check on our granddaughter. She's going crazy. She's talking crazy. We don't know what's going on. We want to make sure she's okay. I'm telling them on the phone, you guys are crazy, man. You guys are crazy. Like these people, these cops are not going to check on your granddaughter. They're going to the hood at 2:00 in the morning for a domestic disturbance where one person is possibly intoxicated. This is where they're going. So now I'm furious. My stress level's on 1,000, right? Because again, I'm 5 hours away. Even if I jumped in the car, I couldn't get there in time to do anything. So it's like it's like being in prison, watching life from a window. You dig what I'm saying? So again, when I sit here and say you don't have to be behind a wall to be in prison, but I'm listening to these cops, long story short, putting handcuffs on my daughter and baking act her.
Wow.
Taking my daughter to a mental institution for the night. Right? Now, of course, I don't sleep a wink. I know my daughter's in some weird hospital somewhere. I'm just waiting on her to call me, praying that she calls me. She and God bless it, I was the first person she called. She was crying, she was scared, and she's like, Dad, I'm surrounded by crazy people. And I told her, I said, first and foremost, don't call those people crazy because you're right there with them. You know what I mean? I said, these are people with issues.
Right.
So I asked if a doctor had came in there and seen her yet. I said, no. I said, Cheyenne, do not tell these people anything, because she was telling the police she wanted to hurt herself. She didn't feel right. So I told her, I said, do not tell these doctors anything. They're going to come in here and ask you questions. I said, all you tell them is that you don't drink. You just have pressure for you getting ready to graduate. You got into a little bit of liquor, got out of control. They hear it all the time. She told him that, and they released her a couple hours later. But to solidify your point, my parents were trusting the police to just go there and just make sure that she was okay, to assess the situation. Okay, girl, you're drunk. Go lay your ass down. The mom was there in the house by that time. Mom, you're home. Make sure she don't come out of the room. Leave, and that was it. You put handcuffs on my daughter, my child, which she was supposed to be the first person in our lineage, in my lineage, that has not had handcuffs put on them. She was supposed to break that chain, but as life has it, God wanted her to feel that steel. And maybe that's the good for her, I believe that God knows what he's doing.
But imagine, see, because what we're talking about is how, first, it's a few subjects that we're talking about in this conversation. We're talking about immunity, officers doing whatever they want to do because they feel that they are they feel they are above the law. They do what they want to do. And oftentimes they do what they want to do and feel that they can do what they want to do because they're untrained. And now that untrained officer is the officer that goes to arrest the mentally ill or the mentally broken. They go to arrest them instead of going to help them because
Or
they're
maybe
not
doesn't even believe in it. Maybe you have these young officers, again, you have these officers at 23, 24 years old, their brains aren't fully developed yet.
So And you know what? You just made a great, great, great point. And this is why I say that the officers who did that to Tyree Nichols, they deserve the harshest punishment possible, right? I say that unapologetically. But I add a caveat to that. The caveat is that although they deserve the harshest punishment possible today for the crime that they committed today, if at some point they show that they have remorse and redeemed themselves of that tragic situation and they've changed their life around, they deserve a second chance. That's how I feel about it because I understand that sometimes their brain is not even formed to the age of 26 anyway. That's what brain scientists say. So they, just like anyone else, is likely to make bad mistakes and continue bad mistakes. Some of them are too. Some of them officers, one of the little guys like 23, 24 years old. So he was acting impulsive. That's what we do at that age. So therefore, we can't heap that type of a certain type of responsibility upon the shoulders of an immature mind, a mind that is not even grown yet. But even considering all of that, I still say that when they gave me my life sentence at 18 years old, they gave me my life sentence. The crime happened when I was 17, but they gave me my life sentence at 18. I mean, it was like a person who be smoking weed and stuff, and you keep messing with them and you blow their high. That life sentence blew my high. It blew my high. And
How long did that
sometimes
take?
to blow my high,
Like how long did it hit you right away, D? Like did it hit you, impact you right away, or did it take a couple years to sit in?
it took a couple years, man, and my
Mhm.
high was blue. I was like, I got life out parole. And sometimes it's going to take those officers because no officer, they got an officer right now I just read about. They gave her 2 life sentences because she was in a love triangle and she killed 2 people, not as the officer, right? They have never given officers life sentences for murders committed while on duty. Never have done this. Maybe they should start now.
Hmm. Well, that goes back into the culture, and this is what we were talking about off show, which I think is a good segue to bring that up, is the relationship between prosecutors and police, right? And the animosity that they show towards civilians, because me as a civilian, I don't see this prosecutor ever in this life. This is a human being that I first come in contact with when I'm charged. This
Yeah.
this human being is already coming in at me as opposition, right? I am the enemy from day one with this prosecutor, but these police, it's different because they have interactions with these prosecutors daily, if not weekly. They're having coffee with them, they have jokes with them, and then this officer goes out on beat one day and does something like this here. Now they're sitting in front of this prosecutor who knows, they may have had a great relationship for years before that.
Yeah. You're
You know
right.
what I mean?
You're right.
To me,
And
that seems like it would be that prosecutor's duty to step forward as a conflict of interest, but I don't hardly ever see that. I see the prosecutor always coming in like, don't worry, hey, you got in some shit.
the prosecutors are the officer's first line of, nope, my fault. Let me take that back. The man, internal investigator,
Internal
I.
affairs.
Internal affairs is the officer's first line of defense. They supposed to come in to actually investigate, but those are the ones I was talking about that would say, look, you don't, as long as you don't have nothing blatant on your record, I got this. Just keep your mouth shut. Don't say nothing to nobody. That's their first line of defense because they are the one who present the paperwork to the prosecutor. And then the prosecutor become the second line of defense because if the prosecutor can see any way out, any way out, any loophole that the I have left, the prosecutor gonna widen that loophole and say, nope, we can't charge him.
Mhm.
That's the confidence that they give in the officers so the officers feel immune about anything they do. And so now we going back to why officers feel that they could just do anything and they're not going to be charged because they haven't been charged. That's why they get what 3 years, 3 to 15, uh, and they was in jail for 90 days. They got out. They've been on a tether or house arrest for 3 years, so they all right. Give one of them life.
Hmm.
Give one of them 20. Give one of them 30 years, and watch how they straighten up. Watch how the officers keep their little cameras on. Watch how the officers begin to speak to the citizens with the respect that real officers speak to the citizens. Watch how they begin to serve and protect the community that they're sworn to serve and protect. When they see that a life sentence is possible for them if they act unbecoming and they should kill someone and the evidence is not in support of your defense. Watch how they act.
That's right.
Some There comes a time when somebody got to be used as an example.
Hmm.
They got to use somebody as an example to straighten out the department. We know the department, the culture of the department. We already know this. That's another subject. We're not talking about the culture of the department. We're talking about the individuals that make up the culture of the department right now. And sometimes they have to set an example with one, two, three, or four of those individuals, kind of like what they did. Excuse me. Kind of like what they did when they fired all of them.
Hmm.
They set an example, even though I don't agree with it because it wasn't fair that they never fired a white officer like that. But that's another topic too. But they did set an example. They say you fired right off the bat. We don't need to look at no more evidence. You fired. The same way they did that by setting an example with them is the same way that they have to set an example when it comes to that lengthy sentence given that officer to say you're not immune. Take this sentence, go sit down for about 20 years. Come talk to us after that. You won't be but 60 years old. Come talk to us after that.
Do you think they fired and charged those cops so quickly because uh there was clear cut evidence that this could have been premeditated from the cop Demetrius taking a picture and texting it to his girl. She turned that over immediately. She turned that over immediately, so maybe that's why they knew that they had something bigger on their hands than just a couple out of control cops. That this looked like a targeted hit from a gang squad.
No, that was a training day. Remember that?
Yeah,
In that
training
city?
day. Right.
It was training day all over again, except this was the real life training day.
And when was training day? When did that come out? Mid
Training day,
90s?
yeah. That's like the beginning 2000s or something.
And we just watched training day play out, literally.
We watched it play out. And they even was talking about trumping up the charges and everything like in training day. Except the difference here was they was already trained. So now you have men who's already trained. And I'm gonna say this because I'm gonna say this unapologetically because I know I'm gonna catch some flack, but I just like to tell the truth. And those white officers, they probably was scared as hell. They had to ride along because if they didn't, these five officers who's probably known to hang together, obviously got a history of whooping on people together. The white officer was probably like, I'm riding with them because if I don't
Yeah.
ride with them, I'm colliding with them.
And right, same thing. Same thing as what was Hoyt.
Yep,
Hoyt.
yep.
Hoyt, he had Hoyt doing dope and all, setting him up the whole time.
Jake, Jake. Yeah. Yes, yes, yes.
I'm muted again. But it's when I sit here and I go to the online and I start looking stuff up. I'm trying to pay attention to that, and I got to figure out before next week. But as I was saying earlier, and I'm gonna recap, and I'm gonna make this my final go, and then I'll pass to D. We had a community. Where was that at, D? Do you know?
Uh,
I didn't
oh,
get a chance to pull it up.
I don't know. I was just reading somebody's response into our training day comment. Topher Mar- Topher Marlin said, "You want to go to jail or you want to go home?" Oh man, yeah, yeah.
So I don't know exactly where it's at, and I don't. Maybe we'll talk about it next week. But the point is that I want to praise this community. I want to praise those people, those individuals. We the people, power to the people. This is my message. When I say that we need to start getting up, standing up for the injustice that we see going on today. If those individuals would have been around Tyree Nichols may still be alive today. We sat here and watched Tyree Nichols being beat to death on a community street and right on the corner of somebody's house. And nobody came out to investigate. Nobody came out to just say, hey, what's going on? He's had enough. Nobody came out to say anything for this individual who lived in this community. So many praises go out to the individuals who stood up and stood in the way of this unarmed black man that was being targeted by police with weapons, convinced the police and possibly saved this man's life. I mean, you had the neighbors out here yelling at the police to calm down, right? So many praises to them. I want our communities nationwide to take note of that. If you have not seen that video, it's viral on TikTok. Please check it out. And we have to get involved. When we see injustice, speak out. Get involved. Know what's going on. Make sure that your brother, your sister's rights are not being violated or possibly in a position to be killed. If the individual is wrong, try to talk him into being apprehended or whatever. Just try to diffuse the situation because the police are not there for it. But I want to give praise to those individuals. Many blessings to you guys. And that's what we
Absolutely.
have to do. And with that, I'm going to pass to D, and we got to get out.
Yeah, I was trying to find it. I can't locate it either. But again, we're gonna give a special high held honor to all the organizations that's fighting against corruption from government, police, whoever it is, whether it's neighborhood, because we always talk about the police killing us, but we killing us too. So we need to stand up against that, like we stand up against the police killing us. Because they go hand in hand. Murder is murder. Ain't no difference because the who shot the bullet. Ain't no different. And so I want to give shout out to all the organizations fighting against these corruptions, these atrocities that's going on in our neighborhoods. Uh, from all the Coming Home Coalition, Great Minds Project 5.0, Good Heart Youth, the Great Minds Project, Michigan Liberation, Nation Outside, and so many others in Michigan that I know of, and so many others across the United States that I know of. We give an honor to all these organizations who fight against the system of corruption, this institutionalized racism, this mass incarceration, and everything else. Uh, and I want us to keep Turkey in our prayers and the families of those who are in Turkey, keep them in our prayer because there's so many people, thousands upon thousands, have died in this earthquake. I mean, thousands. And so we want to keep them in our prayers. And we want to also keep in our prayers because there are so many homicides happening in our minority communities, our lower income communities, in our disenfranchised and displaced communities. And it's senseless. So I want to give a special prayer out to the families of Turkey and the families around the United States who have lost a loved one to violence recently, the past, or whenever it was. We want to send out a special prayer to y'all. And with that, I'm just going to say sugar, sugar, salt is salt. If you didn't get off tonight, it ain't our fault.
Amen, man. Get right. Thursday night, get right. You guys take care. Stay safe. And like the man said, man, you know, a lot of crazy things are going on in the world. Appreciate what you have. Stop trying to accumulate more and just appreciate what you have. We're pretty much on the brink of World War III, people. You know, and who knows where that could go? Who knows where we'll be in the next 10 years? So, as we see with Turkey, we've been lucky, guys. So just appreciate your family, share the love, come together. It's time for us to unite. We the people. Thursday night, get right. Next week, we out.
Peace.